In the land of Israel, a shadow of doom loomed over King Saul. The once valiant king, now beset by fear and uncertainty, found himself at a crossroads. The Philistines, Israel's perennial enemies, had gathered their forces for a decisive battle. Saul, haunted by the absence of divine guidance, sought answers in vain. Night after night, his dreams remained silent, the prophets offered no counsel, and the sacred Urim and Thummim were mute. It was as if the heavens themselves had turned their back on Israel's tormented ruler. Desperation gnawed at Saul's heart, driving him to contemplate the unthinkable. In a kingdom where he had outlawed all forms of necromancy, Saul found himself yearning for the forbidden. He longed for the wisdom of the departed prophet Samuel, the only voice that had ever truly guided him. With each passing day, the king's resolve wavered, and his fear grew palpable. The people sensed his unease, and whispers of his impending downfall spread through the land. As twilight fell, Saul made a fateful decision. Cloaked in disguise, he slipped away from his encampment, accompanied by only 2 trusted men. The king's heart pounded with every step, the weight of his choice pressing heavily upon him. He journeyed to Endor, a village shrouded in mystery, where an infamous witch was rumored to dwell. Saul's eyes burned with determination, knowing this was his last hope. The king who had once banished all mediums now sought their forbidden knowledge, a testament to his profound despair. Upon reaching the witch's dwelling, Saul's presence filled the air with tension. The woman, wary and suspicious, sensed the danger that accompanied this mysterious visitor. When Saul revealed his request, the witch recoiled in fear, recognizing the grave consequences of summoning the dead. Yet, Saul's desperation was a force that could not be denied. With a heavy heart, the witch agreed to conjure the spirit of Samuel, setting into motion events that would change the course of history. The night was thick with an eerie silence as King Saul and his companions approached the humble abode of the Witch of Endor, concealed under the guise of a common man. Saul knocked upon the door, his heart heavy with the weight of his mission. The witch, a figure of legend and fear, opened the door cautiously, her eyes scanning the strangers before her. She hesitated, sensing an aura of authority and danger that she could not ignore. Her instincts told her this was no ordinary supplicant. The witch's initial fear was palpable as Saul revealed his request. Her voice trembled as she reminded the disguised king of his own edict against necromancy. In her mind, she saw the gallows, the punishment for those who dabbled in forbidden arts. Saul, however, was relentless. He swore to her safety, promising that no harm would come to her. Desperation radiated from him, a king brought low by his need for answers. The witch's heart softened, and with a deep breath, she agreed to perform the unholy ritual. In the dimly lit room, the air grew thick with anticipation as the witch began her incantations. She called upon the spirits, her voice a haunting melody that pierced the silence of the night. Saul watched, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and hope. The room seemed to darken as the veil between the living and the dead was lifted. Suddenly, a figure began to materialize before them. It was Samuel, the prophet whose words had once guided the fate of Israel. The sight of his spectral form struck both Saul and the witch with awe and terror. Samuel's spirit, now fully manifest, turned his gaze upon Saul. The prophet's expression was stern, his eyes burning with an otherworldly fire. Saul fell to his knees, his disguise falling away as he faced the ghost of his former mentor. The witch, now realizing the true identity of her guest, gasped in shock. Samuel's voice echoed through the chamber, condemning Saul for his disobedience and foretelling his doom. He spoke of the impending defeat at the hands of the Philistines and the tragic end that awaited Saul and his sons. The king's heart sank as the weight of Samuel's words pressed upon him, the prophecy sealing his fate. As Samuel's apparition stood before them, the room was filled with a chilling silence. The witch, her role now complete, stepped back in awe, her eyes fixed on the ghostly figure. King Saul, on his knees, trembled as he faced the spirit of the prophet. Samuel's presence was overwhelming, his visage a stark reminder of the divine power that had once guided Israel. Saul's voice quivered as he pleaded for guidance, his desperation laid bare. The sight of the king, once mighty and proud, now reduced to a broken man, was a somber testament to his fall from grace. Samuel's voice, though ghostly, was filled with the authority he had wielded in life. He rebuked Saul for disturbing his rest, questioning why the king had turned to forbidden arts. Saul's reply was filled with despair, a confession of his abandonment by God and his fear of the Philistine threat. Samuel's response was unyielding, a harsh reminder of Saul's disobedience. The prophet reiterated the divine judgment that had been passed upon Saul for his failure to follow God's commands. He foretold that Saul and his sons would fall in the upcoming battle, and Israel would be delivered into the hands of their enemies. The gravity of Samuel's prophecy struck Saul like a physical blow. The king collapsed, his strength sapped by the weight of the revelation. His heart pounded with the dread of the impending doom. The witch, moved by Saul's anguish, offered him food, but he refused, consumed by his fear and sorrow. His companions urged him to eat, recognizing the need to sustain their king for the battles ahead. Reluctantly, Saul accepted their plea, partaking in a meager meal provided by the witch, the night's eerie events still fresh in his mind. As dawn approached, Saul rose from his place, his mind heavy with the prophecy. The king and his men departed from Endor, the shadows of the night's encounter lingering in their wake. The journey back to the camp was fraught with tension, each step a reminder of the fate that awaited them. Saul's resolve hardened, but the fear in his eyes betrayed his inner turmoil. He knew that the battle ahead would be his last, the prophecy of Samuel casting a long shadow over his remaining days. The witch, left behind, pondered the night's events, her encounter with the supernatural marking a turning point in the saga of Israel's troubled king. The fateful day arrived, and the battlefield of Mount Gilboa became a stage for the final act of King Saul's tragic tale. The Philistines, driven by a fierce determination, clashed with the Israelite forces. The air was thick with the sounds of battle, the clash of swords, and the cries of the wounded. Saul, weighed down by Samuel's prophecy, fought with a desperation born of inevitability. His sons, Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua, stood by his side, their fates intertwined with his own. The battle raged on, but the outcome seemed preordained. As the sun climbed higher, the tide of the battle turned against Israel. The Philistine warriors pressed forward, breaking through the ranks of the Israelites. Saul's heart pounded as he witnessed the fall of his sons, one by one, their lives extinguished in the heat of combat. The king's despair deepened with each loss, the prophecy's fulfillment unfolding before his eyes. The enemy closed in, and Saul found himself surrounded, his options dwindling. In his final moments, he turned to his armor-bearer, pleading for a merciful death to avoid capture. The armor-bearer, paralyzed by fear and loyalty, refused Saul's request. With no other choice, the king drew his own sword and fell upon it, ending his life on his own terms. The sight of their fallen king demoralized the Israelite troops, and the Philistines swiftly overran their positions. The bodies of Saul and his sons were found by the enemy, their deaths a stark symbol of Israel's defeat. The news of the king's demise spread like wildfire, and the nation mourned the loss of their ruler and his heirs. In the aftermath of the battle, the Philistines took the bodies of Saul and his sons, displaying them on the walls of Beth-shan as a grim trophy. The people of Jabesh Gilead, in a final act of loyalty, retrieved the bodies under the cover of night, giving them a proper burial. Saul's reign had ended in tragedy, his legacy forever marked by his desperate turn to the Witch of Endor. The prophecy had come to pass, and Israel faced a time of uncertainty and mourning. The tale of the Witch of Endor and King Saul's downfall became a cautionary legend, a story of desperation, forbidden knowledge, and the inexorable will of the divine. The witch herself remained a figure of mystery, her powers and role in Saul's fate a topic of speculation and fear. The encounter with Samuel's spirit, the prophecy, and the tragic end of Saul echoed through the annals of history, a reminder of the consequences of turning away from the path of righteousness. In the shadows of Israel's history, the Witch of Endor's forbidden powers stood as a testament to the fragile balance between the mortal and the divine.